is our first observation video. This is our needs assessment. If everyone can go ahead and please introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself by name, your grade level, and how long you've been teaching, and what subject, please.
Okay, so my name is Kimberly Zuniga. I am with the 9th grade. I've been teaching, this is gonna be my first year officially teaching, and then, I'm teaching English.
And my name is Scarlett Gomez Martinez. I am also an English teacher. For the 9th grade, it is my first year teaching.
My name is Kayla Kaufman. I teach 9th grade. This is my official first year teaching, and I teach English 1.
I am Jeremiah Foltz. I have been teaching for 2 years. I teach English 1, which is 9th grade.
Thank you. And I am Aisha Bullock. I am also an English teacher, and this is my 3rd year with English 1. Okay, so today we're gonna go over cause analysis. We're gonna look at some data, and then we're gonna come up with a problem statement. And then we are going to break down the process. So, cause analysis. How can cause analysis help identify root causes? This can be done by examining contributing factors that lead to a particular issue. It can help develop effective strategies to address the underlying issue. Ways cause analysis can help. It can help by helping us gather data, identify relationship, and asking why this problem is happening. So we're gonna look at some data based off of our school. We're gonna look at how many kids are economically disadvantaged, how many SPED kids we have, what have our scores for reading looked like in the past, and how many 9th graders we currently have. So as we go through this data, I want you guys to ask, based on the TAPR report that I will show you, what are some things we can analyze? And then based off of the tracker data, what are some things we can also analyze from that? So here you have your TAR report. This is our demographics from 2022 to 2023. This is the most recent one that is currently posted on the TEA website. As you can see here, we have our students with dyslexia for our campus. We have 56 versus the which is 2.5% versus the district, which is 3.2%. And then here, it tells you our ethnic distribution. We have 162 African American students. We have 1986 Hispanics, and so on. It also breaks down how many students we have. How many students we have that are economically disadvantaged. So for our economically disadvantaged kids, we have 2,105, which is 93.3% versus the district, which is 79.5%. So we have a lot more than the district. Our percentage number is higher. Non-educationally disadvantaged, we have 152 students, which is 6.7% versus the district, which is 20.5%. So they do have more that are non-educationally disadvantaged. We have our 504 kids, of course, which is 72, and that's 3.2%, and the district has 4.0%. So they have more. And then we have our EB kids, our bilingual kids. We have 922. That's 40.9% versus the district, which is 37. So we have more EB kids. We are an EB school. Then if you go over here, you can see how many special education kids we have. We had 241, which is 10.7% versus the district, which is 9.1%. So we have a big SPED population within the Chavez school. So moving on. Currently, we have 464 9th graders for the 2024-2025 school year. So that's a pretty big number. number currently for our enrollment. Here, this is our 2024 accountability summary, for the 2022-2023 school year. Our STAR performance was 37 versus for our component score. And then for our college career and readiness, we had 74, and our graduation rate was 85.5. And then you can see over here that it increased. We went to 42 for our STAR performance, and then our graduation rate went up. Our graduation rate went up to 86, and so did our academic growth. Our academic growth went from 62 to 72. And then our closing the gaps, we went from 49 to 67. So we're getting on up there. For the 2022-2023, you can see a lot of our kids approached more than masters. So we can see from there, there might be a struggle somewhere when it comes to the STAR. You can see here, 955 kids only approached on the reading. And then you can see in 2023-2024, our numbers actually went down. So our kids went from 955 from approaches to 848. So from there, we can also tell there's some sort of disconnect with our students. And then this is our 2022-2023 TAPR report pulled from the TEA website for STAR. You can see here that in 2023, for our campus, 52% approached for English. And then it dropped down, but it was lower in 40. It was lower in 22 by 47%. Does that make sense? So our numbers went up in 2022-2023, but last year they went down. Okay, so together we're gonna come up with what are some learning or teaching gaps that you've noticed so far in the school year. This is our 4th week since school started, so have there been anything that you've noticed as far as learning and or teaching gaps, or if you taught before, what are some things you've noticed previously with our students? So you guys should have a paper in front of you that should say reasons. And there we're gonna each list 3 reasons. We're first going to list what are some of the teaching gaps that we've noticed. And then we will type them up here. So for example, we do have some special education kids who their disabilities could be in reading. And then you have your kids who have dyslexia, which could also cause them to struggle when it comes to reading or even writing, just English overall. So that can also be a learning gap. You can also take in mind our economically disadvantaged kids. So they can come here and they can get the resources they need, but then when they leave, they don't have the same resources they have in school that can help them with their education.
that same branch because like the lack of like the foundational structures that you have in English, because a lot of our students, I know like mine, a lot of them just don't know the foundations. It's hard to teach them the things that we're teaching them right now without them getting confused and having to retrace our steps back.
Lack of foundation. Okay, so the 3 reasons we came up with: students are not reading enough at home, students are not writing on grade level in order to be successful in English 1, and there's a lack of foundation. Now, I want you guys to give me 3 reasons, 3 things you notice that, or that you feel are some barriers to the performance of economically disadvantaged and or at-risk students. So what do you think are some barriers to their performance? What's holding them back?
Sometimes it's just stuff at home, like I know some of my kids are starting to like work and try to help provide or take care of the siblings, being an extra parent.
Okay, what would be another?
One thing that I put was like a motivation for community / no learning centers. The reason I put that is just because, you know, for me personally growing up and seeing some of my kids are growing up the same way I grew up. If they see that nobody within their community has made it to be successful within education, they lose the lack of motivation and are just like, you know, why am I here? Let alone, learning centers, free learning centers are too far for students. So they don't have that capability. If there's no learning centers there, like, if I don't have the help of my community, I can't do it.
Okay, yes. Folks, do you have anything?
Thinking about things that we can control versus what we can't control. I think it's important recognizing what our students are going through at home, and I also think focusing on the things that we can control will allow us to really make a difference. And so when we think about barriers, I think about, you know, what scaffolds can we include so that this is so that what the reasons we're talking about, our students are successful in meeting English 1 writing requirements.
Okay, so do you feel like currently students don't feel like they can be successful?
No, I don't think that. I think some barriers might be that just simply students need more scaffolds in the classroom.
So not enough. Okay, so some barriers we have are, there's some things that take place at home, so some kids are already working, they're trying to help out their parents, and it is taking a toll on their education. The second thing we have is motivation within the community. If the student is not motivated academically, then they will not want to do better academically. And then the third we have is there is not enough scaffolds. Is that good? Okay, so now together we're going to come up with a problem statement. So you guys should have before we come to the problem statement, you should have a paper from you that says control and influence. So we just came up with reasons that our kids could be struggling we came up with some barriers and with control, like, we can control a kid's motivation, right? As soon as they walk in the door, we're like, you got it today, Jimmy, we're gonna get an A today on our quiz, we're giving them that motivation, we're making them feel good about themselves. But what are some things that are influenced that we ourselves cannot control?
What we can control,
What can we control?
we can control our planning for, our lessons. We can control
Okay,
what specific scaffolds we use.
yes, so we can try to plan ahead of time. We saw that we have, we had a drop in scores. What do you guys think the disconnect is with our students? Where do you think they are struggling the most?
I think it's just like, Ms. Gomez Martinez said, I think it's the fact that it's certain foundations that they haven't just grasped yet. And I think that's something that, we can kind of gradually just incorporate into our lesson plans, like small foundations here and there. Of course, as long as they align with the T, but just foundation planning for those certain groups.
Even just reading comprehension, cause like they read it, but they don't understand what they're reading, so it's like, that's something that's also disconnected, and I have heard that from like other teachers. Like, okay, they're reading it, but they're not understanding what they're reading, so.
That's true. Folks brought up a point that our kids are not writing on grade level. Why do you guys think that's a struggle?
Because they, most likely, some of my students, they were very honest, like, we weren't doing this in middle school. Or our English teachers weren't making us write or read enough. So I think it has a lot to do with us picking up the slack from previous teachers, because it's just something that they haven't gotten previously.
So it's like we stated earlier, it's that lack of foundation.
Also showing them how to write specific ways, cause like, some of the kids write the way they speak, and like, it's the same, like, you don't talk to the principal the way that you would talk to a friend or something like that. If you're talking to someone in authority, you have to use a certain tone, you have to like, switch. And the kids aren't grasping, understanding that in the way when they're writing, so if someone else were to read the writing, it comes off as like, not, well, it might not be on level because of the way, like, their stuff that they're writing may be on level, but the way they're writing it is not, it's not making it come across as sometimes.
Okay, so, one thing I've also noticed is they do write how they speak, and there's a lot of grammar issues. We have kids who don't understand commas and periods. There's also spelling issues. So there's some kids whose vocabulary is also not on grade level. What do you guys think plays a hand in that too? Do you think it's just that lack of foundation with school, or do you think it also has something to do outside of school?
I think it also has something to do, like, outside of school. Growing up, like, I had a best friend, my parents didn't know how to read, didn't know how to write, and that kind of was an influence on her because it kind of came down on her. Because I couldn't learn this at home with my own parents, this is where I struggled, in school. So I think it also has something to do outside of home, because the parents aren't putting that forth to say, hey, like, this is important, like, I don't know how to do this, but that don't mean you can't do it, that becomes that within the school.
And I had a question for you, and it completely slipped my mind. Do you think that's something that we can control as teachers?
I think there's something that we can completely control, not necessarily the parents, but our students, providing them the resources after school and saying like, hey, I see that you're struggling in this area, I care, let me help you. Providing those resources outside of the classroom, for your students, and let them know like, hey, this is a safe space where you don't know we can work together. So I definitely think that is something that we can control.
Okay, what do you guys think?
Something else I would add is, I think it was 40% of data is our ED population, so when a language is your second language, you're going to struggle, performing
wrote down for your control versus your influence.
I mean, I've just kind of been writing down thoughts, like as people were speaking and stuff that we can control. I can relate a little bit to Missouri because I do also have ESL students, but they're more so where they can understand English really well. They just choose not to, and that's something that I've struggled with a lot. Because I've had students already tell me like, oh, I'm just gonna drop out and go with construction, and it's like, so they don't feel the need to do work, or they'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna get a 0 on this anyhow, so I'm just not gonna do the work, and so having to bridge that gap as well while they're in the classroom and trying to like motivate them is something that like we have to do, especially when it comes to people in our community, like in the Latino community, especially in EB students.
Yes, and we do have a high number of Hispanic kids within the Chavez community. So we have to make sure that we motivate them, tell them, hey, you have plenty of options, after high school, so maybe like presenting those options to them as well. I usually sit down with my kids and I'm like, hey, what do you wanna do, when you graduate? And one kid will be like, well, I love plants, and I tell them, oh, well, you could be a, how do you say, botanist? Botanist? My apologies, but, I cannot say that word. And then I tell them, this is the steps that you take to have that career. Did you write anything different down?
I'm ready to share.
No? Okay, so for our lesson, our kids have been writing. So with the problem, with the things we've noticed that we can control versus influence, how do you think all of this together is affecting the writing from what we've seen so far? Does that make sense?
Can you get the question one more time?
So with everything that we can control, we've noted and we've been seeing our students writing in these 3 weeks that we've had. We're currently in the 4th week. What do you think can help them with their writing?
Something I do is provide them sentences, so I start off the writing for them. I'm like, okay, this is the way to do it. You just finish that thought out. And something I like at least gets them going from the way to think about what they're gonna write and stuff, rather than just going straight into it and writing it the way they want. Just like, okay, this is kind of a format, this is the formula, so go ahead and just finish it out.
Anybody else?
Well, for my kids, what I do to like help influence their writing just a little bit, I tell them like, hey, I need to go to Barnesville or your local library, get you a book that you're interested in, read about it, and then I want you to write me a paragraph. And you need to come to my class every Friday with a paragraph about the book that you wrote, because for me, it's like, if you can comprehend what you're reading, if you can understand it, then you can write about it, and then we can work on the rest from there.
Another thing I'm doing too is like, cause they use those common words a lot, like good, better, and stuff like that, so I'm like, okay, go find me another synonym, like go look it up on your computer, you have that, go find a better synonym for that word, cause it's not synonym, yeah. I'm sorry, I said synonym, but I'm telling them, go look up another better word for that. For that, use another one, you use that way too much, or like, getting them to do that.
Okay, so with all that said, we are going to identify, we've identified our problem, which is pretty much our 9th graders are currently struggling to analyze text, and it is also causing them to struggle to write on grade level. So is everybody okay with that problem statement?
Something I would add too is, especially on the STAR, in order for students to write a solid essay, they'll need to, like, I think another piece of the puzzle is not being able to analyze the text so that they can effectively answer the prompt for the extent constructive response. So if we're looking at our problem statement, looking at how those two come together.
The analyze I want you guys to ask yourself a couple questions. And we basically just did this. What could be causing this? Why is this happening? How can we meet this gap? So you guys should have a paper that looks like this. It is called the 5 Whys. And on the back, we are going to put our problem in the top box. And then we're going to write our reason. Why is this happening? Why are students struggling when it comes to analyzing text and writing? So, for one example, could be Mr. Foltz said scaffolding. We also said there's a lack of motivation. And then after we put why is it happening, you're gonna ask yourself, why is that? Why do you think this lack of motivation is happening? We discussed that the lack of motivation is something that we as teachers can control. The scaffolding is something we as teachers can control. But why do we think this lack of motivation or, this need for better scaffolding, why do we think, this is happening?
where students are coming from, and so that lack of motivation, even, with it comes also with the lack of scaffolding as well, prevents students from being able to reach and from even wanting to have the motivation to actually continue, because if they're wrong, they're like, well, that's the end of it, and it's like, so yeah.
Ms. Kaufman?
Oh, I went down the reading comprehension route, just for the simple fact that I feel like you can expect students to, like, if they can't comprehend, they reading is very important. I know for me growing up, like, my teachers enforced reading, and for us, if you could read a book, if you could read a novel, page to page, you were going to be able to write. It's just the fact that you had to learn those foundations on how to properly write. Other than that, I also stated that it's not enough, influence given to students to read, such as like the fundamentals of reading, or how you can read and take yourself to another place. Like, that's not being influenced enough to our kids. And yes, that's something that we control, but outside, it's not being influenced enough.
And Mr. Fultz?
So I went down the scaffolding route, and basically all the whys brought me to like, it went from students might not be understanding, comprehending text to improving writing and analysis skills, so students can perform better on tests, so they can graduate, but also so that they can advocate for themselves in the real world, which kind of goes back to my teacher mission. And then root cause, I'm seeing like needing appropriate resources and being able to progress monitor, because I think historically we assign essays and then maybe we have time to give them feedback, but we don't really monitor their essay writing as much as we can and should. Like, we have a common assessment every end of unit, and we analyze that data, we make next steps, but there is no sitting down, okay, let's look at the population of our students and where their writing is at. And I think that is part of the reason why we're not seeing that huge growth, because we're not progress monitoring.
Okay, you guys did some very good problems. So, now, we are going to come up with our action plan. So on your other page, you should have a blank page that looks like this. And it should say action plan to address the problem. So, the plans that we come up for today, we are going to implement them in the classroom. For example, False just said we don't progress monitor our kids' writing. So what's our plan to better monitor their writing? How can we, as an English 1 group, make sure we are monitoring those kids with the writing? We're giving them feedback on time. When it comes to them analyzing text, make sure they are fully understanding how to break down that text, how to understand it. What can be our action plan for the classroom?
Do you want us to write first, or?
Yes, you guys, let you guys brainstorm, and then we'll come together as a group. And this will be something that we all will implement in our classroom. And then when we come back together, we'll talk about what worked and what didn't work. What could we improve, and what can we just toss in the trash? How can we motivate our kids too? What are some ways we can motivate the kids in the classroom? What's our plan for that? encourage our English language learners to speak English more. Because we all have English language learners in our classroom. For our kids that are economically disadvantaged, how can we encourage them to write more, to read more? Give you guys one more minute.
What's it called, like having just information available at the table? Is that an anchor chart? When it's at the table?
When that's the yes signature.
It's
It
still,
could be a chart. Sometimes I even call them like guided notes that they have in the middle. Okay, are we ready? Alright. What are we gonna do for our scholars? Everybody speak at once.
I mean, specifically with like even starting, let's say for example, like an SCR question, like a short constructed response. We can give them examples on how to fully actually break it down.
Okay, okay.
Cause I think, well, since systems are helpful, if students don't even know how to break down and know what the question is asking, they're not gonna be able to answer the question. So starting with that, maybe within that, it could be like a little think aloud, so the kids kind of see how you're teaching it to yourself, so that they can have some idea of how they could implement it with their reading.
One thing that I put for when it comes down to motivating is to ensure that you greet kids with an inspirational quote, every class, or implement, something that is personal with you and your students, like a handshake.
Okay, so make sure we're greeting them at the door. We ourselves have the good pumped energy. I know it's hard sometimes in the morning, but as soon as we get to the door, we're like, hey y'all, how we doing? Good morning. Okay, missing faults?
Senator can go out and look in.
Okay.
So one of the things that I thought about with my, writing is letting them do their peer reviews, like giving them a guided thing and let them see each other so they can see different styles of writing as well as like get more, cause kids are critical with one another. So I'm like letting them use that but in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that gives them like a different point of view of writing. They're like, oh, I never thought of writing like this. I really like this person's writing style, and they can try to apply it to their writing, and it might make their writing even better. Okay.
And getting a firm, what is that thing where you get the bullet points and you tell them this is what it has to happen, so like get it during my
Right.
Yeah, we'll break.
And I like the idea of guiding them through those writings. So maybe as we teach them how to write essays, we can do an example with them. So we can tell them, this is what my essay would look like, this is what my introduction paragraph and my thesis will look like. And we type our own with them. And then we tell them, okay, now it's your turn to write your introduction and your thesis. And we let them do it.
Yeah, I really, am glad that you mentioned that because modeling is one of the ideas about breaking down the questions. I think that's a really, that's an amazing thing that we can and should be doing in the classroom for, especially for, yeah. The think aloud I liked, and then something I would add to that, to what y'all were saying, is the resources on Canvas. I can show you guys, I have a whole page, on essay writing in my Canvas page, and I can, if I'm able to send it, I'll send it. But it's an extensive thing, it's a whole page where it goes over how to write a thesis statement, all the formulas, so for argumentative, informative, all those thesis statement formulas. And then, I also have a short module where it's just videos on how to do a thesis, how to do an introduction, and it's even broken down on, okay, if you're really not comfortable with writing, start with these videos. And then if you're like, I'm ready for the next level, you then go to the advanced videos. So going back to what we were saying earlier, like increasing the resources that we have available, such like that. And then something, what I actually wrote down is I broke it down to classroom and assessment. So, for my students, I do discussion posts on Canvas each week, so that gives students a regular time to practice, and they have to reply to a peer. And then I think this is kind of already said, but having sentence stems, at each table group, having graphic organizers, when planning an essay. So I think in the past, it was like, okay, like, here's what goes into this, but it's not like, here's literally this graphic organizer. Like, I think we could do better providing that and requiring them to put it in and fill it out. Because they'll tell you a million times, oh, I don't need a planner, I can just write. And then it's like, yeah, but that's a 50% essay. So, saying like, I get that you don't think you need it, but it's required. So, and then the modeling piece, of course, so that's classroom, and then reflecting and progress monitoring. So, like we were saying earlier, we give common assessments, but we don't give a common assessment for extended constructive response, which is STAR's version of essay. So, having that, and then progress monitoring, the analysis through DOLs and the actual common assessment. So how are you doing on the analysis piece, and then also how are you doing on the ECR? And are we seeing analysis in your essay?
Yes.
And the last thing I would say is, maybe as a team, we should set a goal for the scores we want to see on those. The average last year for our campus was a 2 out of 10. So figuring out what that goal should be.
Okay. So what do you guys think? What should our goal be for our kids when it comes to their writing? So last year we had 2 out of 10.
I think the goal should be to aim as high as possible. Me personally, like, it's my first year teaching, so I'm new to the whole scoring and stuff like that, but I tell my students all the time, like, I'm gonna try to be able to write on my level. I'm gonna try to be able to write on the level of college essays and stuff like that. And just kind of have them aim for those writing scores of what's the high score of writing, like a 4 on the STAR test? Yeah, for them to aim for like a 4, like, cause even if you don't reach that high goal, at least you landed somewhere soft like a 3. So you want them to score 5 times. So
What the STAR does is they take, I think it's AI grades it, and then a person grades it, and then they're both added together. So AI grades it out of 5, a person grades it out of 5, and then it comes together to form 10. So that's where we get 2 out of 10. So I really like what you're saying about shooting as high as we can, and I think if we're pushing students to something like a 4 or a 5, then we can at least hit a 4. Because the state average is a 4, and we really should be hitting the state average.
Okay, I have one more question. One of the problems we came up with was monitoring our kids' writing. So what's our plan to make sure that we are monitoring and giving them the appropriate feedback they need in a timely manner?
I think just having the DOLs have a bit more SCRs in it will be a beneficial thing. Just like once we get, off campus and they are able to do that, I think that's very much us quickly kind of like giving them feedback on, not the spot, but like very much that same day. Cause like if our DOLs have at least 1 SCR and we make them write at least like 100 words or so, and they have to have these certain components of that SCR, and that's gonna get them to like
when I was teaching over the summer, and they had computers. It was this little thing that the teachers used to have them type, and they gave them a certain topic or something like that, and sent it to the teacher. So in regards, you know, there's only, you know, y'all do that, but with their rough drafts, what we can do is kind of pull them, say, hey, we go over your rough draft,
Yeah.
and then
Do that.
from that point on, you know, once we finish looking at the students' rough drafts, you know, just a little bit, give them tweaks in here, we know those students who we might need to pull for small groups. And then have those one-on-ones like, hey, you know, y'all not in trouble, let's just go over these rough drafts one more time. And just pulling those small groups for those students.
Okay, so small groups, one-on-one to.
And being strategic too, getting some feedback if you can to hire performing students, but it really should be the students that are not even close, because we wanna push them all to where we want.
Okay, so we have concluded our meeting, we came up with our problem statement, we looked over our demographics, and we came up with our action plan. This will be the plan that we will implement in the classroom. So what I can do is I can scan everybody's papers, and I can email them, so everybody can see this is what our plan is, this is what I should be implementing within the classroom. And then next month, we will get together and we will talk about what we've seen, again, what has worked, what hasn't worked, what improvements have